Greetings and welcome to Unit 2 of first week of Instruction and Good Learning. The unit is related to features of good learning. As a teacher, should know something about learning, how people learn, and what people think about learning, and what are the characteristics of good learning. Those are the issues that will be addressed in this particular unit. In the earlier unit, we understood the purpose of the whole course, instruction for good learning, and the outcomes of the course. Okay. Now, in this particular unit, we will try to understand key features of good learning and some important theories of learning. Okay, if you want to formally define what learning is, learning can be defined as relatively permanent change in knowledge, skills, behavior, and attitudes. Relatively permanent. Nothing will be really permanent for a variety of reasons. We will get to know that a little later, but that's why we will say learning leads to relatively permanent change in knowledge, skills, and behavior. If it doesn't, then you haven't learned. It involves acquiring, processing, and retaining information or abilities that can be applied in new contexts. You have learned in one context, you have acquired, processed, and retaining information in one particular context, but I can make use of it in another context as well. And learning is an active, ongoing process. It is not a passive activity. It has to be an active, ongoing process. We continuously look at it, whatever we have learned in different contexts, and try to make adjustments to what we have learned. Learning is influenced by cognitive, emotional, and environmental factors. They all influence our learning. If I am not in a mood, something happened at home, then even if I sit in the classroom, I am unlikely to learn. Okay? Learning can occur through experience, like you have first-hand experience. Learning often results from first-hand experiences which may influence future behavior or understanding. Okay? Then it also happens by practice. Repeating certain tasks or actions can lead to improved proficiency and understanding, often seen in skill acquisition. Okay, when you keep practicing something, the learning becomes a little more permanent, as well as it becomes better and better. Then you study. You also engage with new information through reading, and it can enhance knowledge and cognitive abilities. So the other one is observation. Learning can also occur vicariously by observing others and understanding the consequences of their actions. So learning can occur through these four activities, and all of them we do it already, but we can also, if we are conscious of this, we can, sometimes we cannot directly experience. So many times we resort to just studying. But after studying, if you practice it, if you keep practicing something, either solving problems or repeatedly reading something from different sources, you can also learn better. And some of the things you can only learn by observation, because everything cannot be learned by direct experience. And key characteristics of learning include learning results in changes that are relatively stable over time. If it hasn't happened, then you have not learned. It allows individuals to adapt to new situations and environments based on past experiences. Learning often involves both cognitive and emotional components, influencing how knowledge is acquired and applied. We'll spend more time on this, how the emotional part does influence. When something is, if you have experienced when you are learning something new, if there is an emotion involved in that, you are likely to retain that uh, for a longer period of time. Okay? Learning is multifaceted process. It is not just a single unitary activity. And what do we mean by good learning? Good learning is a holistic process that involves cognitive, emotional, and social dimensions, leading to a well-rounded educational experience. So we are just formally defining all this, but we will actually build it into our instruction in subsequent units. What are the key traits of good learning now? Active engagement. Active engagement means when some new information is presented, the students will have to engage with that. How do you engage with that? Either to discuss among the students, or interacting with the teacher, or actually utilizing the new information to do something. So that is actively engaging with the new knowledge. Deep understanding, rather than just merely memorizing facts, good learning emphasizes understanding and the ability to apply knowledge in various contexts. If you look at that, for example, many things that are happening, people are putting a lot of effort to shift from memorizing to understanding. And that's what some of the academies are trying to do. Then practical application, applying knowledge to real world situations, which helps solidify understanding. Unless you apply to real world situation, your understanding is not solidified. It doesn't stay with you. And then you talk about critical thinking. Effective learners analyze information from different perspectives and evaluate sources. But this is something that doesn't happen with us always. If you have some preferences, let us say, especially happens with regard to politics, and this particular thing is becoming more important because of the fake information that is being circulated. Before you accept something, can you check the source, or can you find out what is the bias from which it is presented? If you are able to look at that, then you are critically thinking. And effective learners always should analyze the information from different sources. And continuous improvement. Emphasizing a growth mindset, good learning encourages ongoing self-assessment and adaptation to enhance skills and knowledge. As somebody said, if you really want to master something, let's say whether it is music or even a technical subject or anything for that matter, visual arts and so on, and they say it requires about 10,000 hours of ballpark figure, 10,000 hours of practice and learning. Then you can consider somebody as a master. Good learning is facilitated by motivation and interest. If you are not motivated, obviously that you have to have passion, love for that, then you it is likely to lead to effective learning. And then also, good learning is facilitated by feedback and reflection. If there is a constructive feedback, if somebody gives you, or you get it from inputs from others, then you are likely to learn better. And also, you must have reflective practice. Reflective practice means the learner himself will keep reflecting on what he has learned and try to see whether he observes any deficiencies or what is it that he needs to do next to help improving in or further strengthening his learning. So if all these features are incorporated in learning, then it leads to good learning. Then we come to as we mentioned earlier, there is a lot of work that has been done over the last several decades on different aspects of learning, and these get reflected in what you call theories of learning. This has been happening right from 1920s. Theories of learning are frameworks or models that explain how people acquire, process, and retain knowledge and skills. These theories guide educators, psychologists, and researchers in understanding how learning occurs and how to improve instruction. There are large number of learning theories, but we will confine ourselves to some prominent ones at this point of time. These are behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, social learning theory, experiential learning, and connectivism. Constructivism is different from connectivism. Each of these theories offers valuable insights into the learning process and can inform teaching strategies and educational practices. It is not like you make a choice among them. Each one has focused on certain aspects and provided a learning theory. So they are not mutually exclusive. They are complementary to one another. Depending on the context that you have, you resort to one of these learning theories, or you combine multiple learning theories into your practice. The oldest and most very popular one, even till today, is behaviorism. This theory is associated with psychologists like B.F. Skinner and John Watson. Learning is viewed as a change in behavior caused by conditioning. This has evolved in the era 20s and 30s, 1920s and 30s, when we hardly knew anything about the brain. Learning happens in the brain, but we hardly knew anything about it. So they considered brain is a black box. The only thing that you know, that is you give some inputs and some output comes. So you only look at it as input-output modeling rather than anything you know what is inside the brain. Okay? So behaviorism is a learning theory focused on observable behaviors, that is outputs, and how they are influenced by the environment, especially through stimuli and responses. You give some input, something happens. And maybe you change the conditions, the same stimuli leads to different response. So the whole thing is based on that. What are the principles of behaviorism? Learning is demonstrated through visible change in behavior, not mental processes. We don't know what, at least at that time, we didn't know what the mental processes were. So you only look at if there is no change in the behavior, then you have not learned. Behavior is learned by forming association between stimulus and response. Okay, there is an event that happened and there is a change in behavior. Adding something pleasant to encourage behavior that is positive reinforcement. That is, under these conditions which are pleasant to the individual, then the learning is likely to be better. That is positive reinforcement. Removing something unpleasant to encourage the behavior is negative reinforcement. That is removing unpleasant things. That is, in the classroom, if it is very hot, very humid, and you are sweating and you are confined in a narrow space, obviously you cannot expect the student to learn. So, if you are able to remove those unpleasant things, then the student can learn better. Reinforcement increases the likelihood of behavior repeating. So, if you are positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, then the behavior is likely to repeat. That is, you have learned. Adding something unpleasant to reduce the behavior. Positive punishment. That is, that punishment can come in several ways. Either by, let's say, the teacher shouting at the student, or actually giving a physical punishment. Obviously, it will reduce the behavior. Though people believe by giving punishment, the students are likely to learn better. That is old school. Removing something unpleasant to reduce the behavior. That is negative punishment. Learning occurs through repeated exposure and practice. The more behavior is reinforced, the stronger it becomes. That is, this we in school level at least people do that. You keep on repeating, or you come home and repeatedly read something, repeatedly solve the same problems, and which is practiced even today in preparing for the competitive exams. A learner is seen as passive. The environment and external stimuli shape the behavior. Somehow still, learner is seen as passive, and the focus is on environment and external stimuli. Thoughts, emotions, and intentions are not central to learning in behaviorism, though this people obviously criticize, and they are addressed in the by other learning theories. That is one of the very strong, dissatisfaction with behaviorism. Classical conditioning, Pavlov, learning through association. You associate, let us say, listening to a bell and reacting to something. That is an example. Operant conditioning, that is due to Skinner, learning through consequences. If you do something, these are the consequences. Once you experience the consequences, then you will correct your behavior. So that is through rewards and punishments. And when you bring it to higher education, how does it get translated? Drills, coding labs, simulation, and practice exams are based on the idea of repeated exposure reinforces learning. This is still practiced. In some of the colleges, you have a practice exam. And then you have coding labs. These are all the application of behavioristic principles. Immediate feedback acts as a reinforcer, positive or negative, helping learners adjust their behavior. Online quizzes, automated grading, and peer reviews. These are provide immediate feedback. Shaping behavior gradually. It's called scaffolding. That is, you solve a simpler problem, and once you understand all the steps in that, you go next level to next level problem, and again practice. This is called scaffolding. Behavioral strategies are used to set expectations and manage behavior. And how do you do that? By setting deadlines. You have some rules of participation, penalties for plagiarism. So when you do all that, these are the behavioral strategies in improving the learning. Further, behaviorism and higher education. Behaviorist principles still underpin many practical teaching strategies, especially in motivation, assessment, and skill building. So, we still make use of many of the behavioristic principles at higher education as well. Professors still use positive reinforcement like praise, grades, or recognition to encourage participation, punctuality, and effort. Clear learning objectives and expected outcomes. In higher education, rubrics, grading criteria, and performance benchmarks are often aligned with this principle. Okay? So you have many things that are based on behavioristic principles. Now, after 1940s, we started understanding something about the mental processes. Mental processes means attention, thinking, let's say how does the memory work, problem solve. There are many we call them cognitive processes. People have started understanding them. And once you understand that, obviously they have impact on the learning as well. So this whole process of our whole area wherein it is based on our understanding of the mental processes is cognitivism. Okay? Cognitivist theory focus on mental processes involved in learning such as thinking, memory, and problem solving. Jerome Bruner and Jean Piaget are notable figures in this field. There are hundreds and hundreds of researchers since 1940. A lot of contributions have been made in the area of cognition. This theory suggests that learners actively process information and build cognitive structures. This is cognitivism. Key principles of cognitivism are learners are not passive, whereas the behaviorists think learners are passive. Learners are not passive, they actively process, organize, and interpret information. New information is understood in relation to existing knowledge. Knowledge structures. Learning involves in modifying and building new schemas. That is, you already know something, and if new information is related to what you knew, and based on that, you now modify your existing body of knowledge. That is the basic tenet of cognitivism. Learners retain information better when it is logically organized, connected to prior knowledge, and contextualized. This is based on this, we plan our instruction. We will look at it in detail in the later units. Learning is modeled like a computer system, sensory memory, working memory, long-term memory. There is a logical processing of information and so on, almost like a computer-based model of the brain. Attention and perception are crucial. If you don't have attention, obviously information doesn't go in. If you sit in a class, your mind is somewhere else and you are concerned about something that happened at home, then obviously nothing goes in. Attention is the most important commodity of anybody. So, attention and perception are crucial. That is one of the basic things that a teacher will have to do is first make sure how do I get attention of the students. You have to spend some effort in getting their attention. How do you do that? Either sharing some anecdote or cracking a joke so that everybody's attention is on to you, and then you carry it out from there. Okay? Then you have rehearsal, elaboration, and organization help move content into long-term memory. Because from a temporary memory, you have to transfer it to long-term memory. And how do you do that? Feedback helps correct and refine mental models. So you keep giving feedback and you rehearse, you elaborate, and you show how to organize information so that things move into long-term memory. Metacognition improves learning. Metacognition, we will elaborate much later. Students learn better when they are aware of their own thinking. If you, this has been addressed extensively in the previous course. Students learn better when they are aware of their own thinking. Being aware of their own thinking means students should know what do they know, what they don't know, and how do they know, and what is it that they need to do to know better. So if you are aware of these processes, that is what is called metacognition. Motivation and goals influence learning. Okay, if you are motivated and you have clear goals, the same thing are also part of, they're also emphasized by behaviorism. Then comes another learning theory called Constructivism. Constructivism is a learning theory that emphasizes how learners actively construct knowledge rather than passively receive it. People construct knowledge by relating to what they already know and build on top of that. This goes with our present understanding of how the brain is organized. Okay? So, a teacher will have to facilitate the students to construct their own knowledge. Because the prior knowledge of every student is slightly different, so one has to facilitate different students to construct new knowledge and make it related to the prior knowledge. And this is proposed by theorists like Vygotsky and Piaget. According to Constructivism, learning is personal, social, and contextualized process built upon prior knowledge and experience. For example, if you try to put, let's say, a group to do a project and the participants in the group come from different cultures, different backgrounds, it is not that they immediately will be able to interact with one another. You have to understand what is the context from which the other member of the team is coming from, and you have to adjust to one another. And that is one of the key issues today, because these days projects are done at global level. You have people participating from different countries working on a project. So this becomes a major issue. What are the key principles of constructivism? Learners build new knowledge by connecting it to what they already know. Meaning is constructed, not transmitted. Information is transmitted, but meaning is constructed by individuals. Okay? Learners interpret new information through the lens of existing beliefs and experiences. Misconceptions must be addressed, not just corrected. Why did a misconception occur? You have to explore that, and it should be addressed. Not merely say you cannot merely say that is a misconception and this is a correct one. Knowledge is best understood when tied to real life situations and meaningful contexts. Abstract ideas are easier to grasp when grounded in authentic tasks. Some people are very good with abstract concepts. They don't require concepts. They can clearly, logically do that. But that group will be very small in a classroom. Okay. Learning is enhanced through dialogue, collaboration, and shared problem solving. Concepts are co-constructed through peer and teacher interaction. This is what you call Vygotsky's social constructivism. That is, through social interactions, you can construct knowledge better. And that is the reason why teacher, wherever possible, should include group exercises or group discussions to understand something better or solve problems better. Further, learners explore open-ended questions, investigate, and construct solutions. Teachers serve as guides, not content deliverers. They can only guide, and that is the reason why instructional methods like problem solving methods or project based methods are becoming popular these days. Instruction should be tailored to the learner's needs, background, and pace. Encourages autonomy, self-direction, and intrinsic motivation. Let us say the methods a teacher uses in a place like IIT, where the students come through an elaborate screening process, and you go to a rural engineering college, you cannot use the approaches that are used in IITs to rural engineering colleges. That is where the context and backgrounds do matter. Okay, so you cannot use the same instructional method that is used in one institution in the other. It has to depend on the context. Learners must reflect on their thinking and learning process. That is metacognition, what we already said. Reflection helps consolidate knowledge and improve problem solving. Now come the social learning theory. Albert Bandura's theory emphasizes the importance of observing, modeling, and imitating behaviors, attitudes, and emotional reactions of others. It highlights the role of social context in learning. What are the key principles of social learning theory? People can learn new behaviors by watching others without direct experience. That's how people learn in many communities. Keep on observing others where you don't have formal schooling. People learn by observing others. To learn through observation, the learner must pay attention to the model. Factors like novelty, attractiveness, competence of the model affect attention. So if a learner finds it interesting and novel, he will observe the details much better and learn faster. Learners must remember what they observe. Mental images, language, and rehearsal help store the observed behavior in memory. All these get reflected in the instructional methods that we use. Other principles of social learning theory: learner must have the physical and cognitive ability to reproduce the behavior. Practice may be needed to match what was observed. People only imitate behavior if they are motivated to do so. Motivation is influenced by rewards and punishments, direct or vicarious, perceived value of the outcome, and self-efficacy, that is, belief in one's own ability. Learners' belief in their own ability to succeed affects how they learn and whether they persist. These principles may look very theoretical, but we will actually make use of these principles in some of the methods that we are going to deal in great detail in the later units of this course. So right now, you're just getting a glimpse of many learning theories that exist, and as a teacher, you may want to explore, or you may prefer some of these things, but you need to explore them more in detail. We are only presenting a brief, rather overview of these principles. Then comes the experiential learning theory. Experiential learning is a theory developed primarily by David Kolb, which emphasizes learning through direct experience. If it is possible to have direct experience, there is nothing like it. But wherever there is a possibility, you must should learn through direct experience. It is rooted in the idea that knowledge is created through transformation of experience, learning by doing, and then reflecting on that experience to make meaning. Okay? So, key principles of experiential learning. Learning is a process, not a product. Okay? Product is what you should be able to do as a consequence of learning. But to that extent, learning is a process. Learning is continuous and cyclical, not one-time event. It involves active engagement and reflection over time. So when you look at this principle, what is involved? First of all, you have to acknowledge learning is a process and it is continuous and cyclical. That is, you repeat. It is not one-time event. It involves active engagement. After getting engaged with that, you reflect over what you got, how you got engaged. Okay, all these active engagement and reflection, they are all part of. They should be part of instructional activities. Learner constructs understanding by interacting with the world. Real-world hands-on experiences are central to learning. Learning requires reflective observation, not passive observation, thinking about what happened, why and how it connects to theory. Reflection turns experience into insight. Learning engages cognitive, emotional, and physical domains. It is not just about facts, it involves values, feeling, and actions. So it is not a very, what we call, everything is not objective that way. It is not like an equation, a mathematical equation. And you have values, feelings with everything that you experience. Individuals learn in unique ways, influenced by their prior experiences, culture and environment. Context matters. Authentic, relevant tasks enhance engagement. These are the principles of experiential learning. Further, learners face new challenges that may conflict with existing knowledge. Sometimes it happens you have some existing knowledge and the new experience doesn't match with that. Then you have to resolve those conflicts by adjusting their understanding. And the teacher should facilitate that. Learning follows, as per Kolb, 4-stage cycle. Concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. All these four, there is a cycle. You keep repeating that again. Learners may enter at any point, but must cycle through all stages for deep learning. Okay, you may enter at the reflective observation stage for something new, but you keep going through all the 4 stages before the learning is complete. Then you have Connectivism. Connectivism is a modern learning theory proposed by George Siemens and Stephen Downes, developed to explain how learning happens in the digital age, especially through networks, technology, and connections between people and systems. It is particularly relevant in online learning, MOOCs, and knowledge based work environments. Key principles of learning in connectivism: knowledge exists across networks or networks of connections between people, digital systems, organizations, and information sources. Learning involves navigating, growing, and making sense of these networks. Okay, not all knowledge is stored in the mind of the learner. That we have to accept. It can exist in databases, websites, people, and devices. The ability to access and use knowledge is important. That becomes now the key characteristics. How do I go to a specific source? How do I decide that knowledge is relevant to that, whether it is correct or not, because of existence of lot of fake information? And how do I filter that? That becomes important these days. The ability to locate, filter, and evaluate information is key. Learning how to learn and where to learn become more critical than content mastery. Further, in fast changing fields, learning is knowing latest matters. You cannot say wait until some textbook comes. There may not be any textbook related to the topic you are currently concerned. Learning is continual, and being connected to current knowledge flows is essential. If there are no textbooks, then how do you learn? You can only learn through some either research papers or some reports. How do I locate them? How do I integrate the content of these various research papers? How do I find what is important to me? All these become important. Choosing what to learn, when and where it is relevant, is a key skill. The meaning of incoming information can change, and learners must evaluate information constantly. Because even as teachers, right now, you have to conduct teaching and learning with changing rules of, let us say, the NBA and NAC. And you have to find out what are these new rules, new constructs that have been proposed, and how do I help my students in this continuously changing context. The industry requirement keeps on changing. I cannot keep on continuing to teach the same old thing, because in that case my students after graduation are not employable. Employability is an issue. So a teacher has to constantly adjust his things to make his students employable. Technology is not just a tool but a partner in the learning process. AI systems, algorithms are collaborative platforms. Knowledge is created and shared through interaction with others. Communities of practice, discussion forums, blogs, social media are central to connectivist learning. Okay. In the next unit, we'll review a revised Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Revised Bloom's taxonomy of learning was addressed in the previous course, and we also consider that as a prerequisite to this course. But we will, in one unit, we will review the revised Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Thank you very much for your attention.